Hey, what's else going on, you guys? It's People Play Negative AE, and welcome back to another episode of Higurashi When They Cry. This is the last and final chapter of at least the mainline series of games. I know that there's like console arcs and stuff that we can come back to later. But as of right now, this is kind of like the final frontier. There's a couple things that I'm interested in this story. I don't expect them to do too much other than explain how the final, like the good ending, will go. But I think it'd be really cool if they went through like a backstory of Rika, because all we know right now is that she's a mage or she's a witch that has a demon friend, um, and she reincarnates when she dies, which is odd. And so like I want to know, like, did she know she was a mage from the start? Um, did she just start repeating when she died, or did she know that she was going to repeat whenever she died? And like, what was the deal with that? Like, I don't know. I think it'd be cool, like, if not here, if there was like a spin-off thing where it was like it went over that stuff. That might be interesting. I'm also interested in Satoshi, but they kind of like vaguely hinted at it where Takano and the Mountain Hounds probably just took care of him because they were talking about how they wanted to eliminate anybody that like left the city at all. So I think that they're just gonna leave Satoshi's story alone, and we're not gonna get any more information. But I think Satoshi was so interesting. I feel like I always felt like he had like a bigger part to play, but it turned out he just died. He just died a pathetic death because he left. So it might be interesting to go into like the backstory of exactly what happened because it's kind of shrouded in mystery, right? It's not completely clear like the rest of the game was, right? Like he left, but they just kind of hinted at like where he was and where he was. I think Satoko is like, well, I don't know, I don't know. Satoko is like a weird one too because like I don't know, I don't know. There's a bunch of stuff. I'm gonna stop talking now because we're 2 minutes in. Let's just start the freaking game. I apologize for the loud sounds and stuff. As always, this is going to be very. It's going to be a shorter episode, and just let me know how the audio is. The sound is probably off, but the music is probably fine. Is what I'm guessing. I'm going to turn it down because I know there's laughing that happens right here. Always, and it's probably really loud. There we go. Now we're back to like 8. Everyone is entitled to happiness. The difficult part is accepting that. Everyone is entitled to happiness. The difficult part is fulfilling that. I too am entitled to happiness. The difficult part is working out a compromise. I feel like they use a lot of Frederica's quotes. A work of fiction. I hope so. I hope it's a work of fiction. Okay, this is a. Did we? We should increase the text speed. I didn't do it last time. Is there a way to increase the? Oh, but see, I don't want to increase the text speed. I like keeping it like this because, like, if the text sometimes the text moves by itself, and I can't have that because sometimes it moves way too fast if I have it on. Okay, anyway, the study is filled with piles of books and papers. There's a full-figured old man who is reading something at his desk. He is in utmost concentration. There's also a girl who's sorting out papers on the carpet. She almost looks like she's playing with them. But she looks very serious, which makes it clear she isn't just playing. Grandpa, I'm done sorting them out. Thank you. Let's see what happened. Look, there are many people with the same symptoms. This is absolutely abnormal compared to the national average. Exactly what I expected. I just found a very interesting article too. About psychosurgery and culture. It talks about parasites that live in the frontal lobe of the brain. The frontal lobe allows people to have emotions. That's right. Emotions aren't created by the heart. The brain creates the secretions that allow the people to have emotions. If parasites live in that part of the brain and spread to make up a colony, the colony will have one single idea. You think parasites are the cause of the spread of ideology? When ideologies clash, clash. Are parasites clashing too? Or the distribution of religions, the distribution of borders, and the distribution of races. It stipulates that the cause of the conflict of cultural communities in this world is the work of parasites that control human emotions. There are people in other countries who think the same thing as you, Grandpa. Of course there are. There are countless parasites on this earth, and they coexist with their hosts. And sometimes the parasites control their hosts. A lot of those parasites have been discovered already. However, people refuse to believe that these parasites live in human bodies and can even control their hosts. Why do you think that is? Humans aren't a special existence. You can presume that by replacing the spread of ideologies with an epidemiological point of view. Epidemiological. That is like the craziest word. Epidemiological. It would be peaceful if a confrontation of ideologies was solved by discussion, but if a confrontation was epidemiologic, then it would be scary. To stop a bad idea or culture from spreading, they treat it epidemiologically. Think about the Black Plague in Europe in the Middle Ages. An infectious disease spread. They forced infected people to be hospitalized and didn't release them until they were completely recovered. Some even died in the hospital. They burned the bodies. They burned everything the patient touched. They forced the patient's family to go to the hospital. They put healthy people in the hospital because of one idea. Replace an idea with a disease. The rest is the same. People won't be released until they completely recover. They burn everything that may have been touched by the patient. They force the patient's family to go to the hospital. An idea is personal freedom, isn't it? It's different from a plague. If a human idea was created by parasites, it would be exactly the same as a plague. In other words, an idea is like an incurable epidemic disease. That means whoever has a different idea is treated like an infected patient. That's right. If we think even farther, there may be even a mass murder of races or religions, but that may end up justifying a massacre. Therefore, talking about parasites in brains has been taboo after the war. What is a taboo? Something people shouldn't get into. Someone who doesn't know taboo. So nobody researches it. Nobody even remembers anything about parasites that live in brains. They assume parasites that control humans simply don't exist. It's almost funny. How can they prove something doesn't exist? That's just impossible. Exactly. To prove that the devil exists is easy. Just show someone the devil to prove it. But you can't prove it doesn't exist. You can't show somebody something that doesn't exist. Hold on. To prove the devil exists is easy. You just show someone the devil to prove it. Okay, yeah. If you show me the devil incarnate in front of me, I'll be like, okay. But you can't prove it doesn't exist. Okay. You can't show somebody something that doesn't exist. I agree. It's almost as if the parasites in the brain are controlling people so that they can keep their own existence a secret. Humans are simply a type of creature in this natural world. We are at the top of the food chain, but it's foolish to think that we are superior to the others. Humans can be controlled by the parasites. Just because the existence of such parasites hasn't been proven doesn't mean they don't exist. But it doesn't mean they do exist. They exist. That's not how that works. I know they do. That's not how that works. Wait, go back. There have been many scientific cases like that in the scientific world too, right? That's right. Not all the scientists are acknowledged for their work while they are alive. There are many who were ridiculed and couldn't prove themselves, but I hope your theory will be acknowledged before you die. Otherwise, it would be so sad. Don't worry. God doesn't ignore people who work hard. Hard work always pays off in the end. When is it going to happen? Nobody knows when God is going to descend. Just like you'll never know when you'll be robbed. So we always have to be alert and ready so we don't miss our chance. That's something grandfather says all the time. Nobody knows when efforts bear fruit, but it will happen. That's why you must always work hard so you have no regrets when the time comes. Efforts will bear fruit someday. That's what he means. But is it going to happen before you die? Even though there were so many scientists who weren't acknowledged while they were alive? Such a cruel thing to say. But I didn't mean to be cruel. I've seen how hard grandfather has been working, and I also know he won't live forever. I just want him to be acknowledged before he dies. Do you know the resurrection of Jesus? Yeah. He was crucified and resurrected after 3 days. You told me about it. How do you think Jesus was resurrected? Did he just get up as if he was waking up in the morning? He was buried after his execution, so his body was in the ground. Did he kick the tombstone like a zombie and get up? No. That wouldn't be called a resurrection. The sinners who killed Jesus imagined exactly the same thing. Jesus predicted just before he was executed that he would come back to life after 3 days. The sinners had buried Jesus and sealed his tomb, and the guards had guards observe the tomb. But what Jesus meant wasn't that he would revive physically. He meant his teachings would be resurrected. After 3 days, Jesus' teachings resurrected, and the people regained their belief. Jesus' teachings resurrected in the people who wanted to be led correctly. That is the meaning of Jesus' resurrection. Jesus came back to life in the hearts of his believers. Jesus doesn't exist physically on this earth, but he exists in people's hearts. In other words, that's when Jesus resurrected as an existence that's superior to humans. Even if it's after the author's death, as long as his work receives a fair evaluation, it will live again as a great achievement. Even if my body is gone, my existence will revive and be evaluated. Does that mean you'll become a god just like Jesus? That's right. My research will be acknowledged someday. That's when I become a god. That's why I'm not in any rush to be evaluated. I do not know when that day will come. God doesn't know that either, but the day will come. That's why I need to continue to work hard. It is sad to hear him say that his life isn't endless. It's not like he is ill and only has a few years to live, but set next to the average lifespan, he doesn't have too many years left. I only have my grandfather. Therefore, I don't want to think about him being gone. Grandfather must have remembered that I don't like to talk about this subject. He smiles gently and rubs my head. Of course, I want my research to be acknowledged after I die. I will do my best. Yep. I will do my best to help you too. I purposely didn't mention the before you die part. I catch myself before I say it. Thank you. I'm happy. Grandfather smiles in satisfaction. It's not an outrageous research. He's not trying to uncover the mystery of the universe. We are only after a possibility of parasites controlling human behavior, that's it. It's nothing outrageous. But it's not just a wild idea. We have some leads. Okay. Hinamizawa in Shishibone City. The villagers have an obstinate homing instinct. When they are unable to return, they behave abnormally and allegedly as if they are cursed. There are also some abnormal rules in this village which are based on their belief. When he was with them during the war, grandfather noticed similarities between the people from Hinamizawa and assumed the existence of something that controlled the village. Since then, he has been researching it. In the middle of the Showa era, numerous strange diseases were revealed all over Japan. Most of them were caused by infectious parasites, and people started to pay attention to this forgotten area. Grandfather's research was simply one of those strange disease researches. Therefore, he believed it would be published among other researches and evaluated soon. But if his research doesn't bear fruit before his death, I will continue his research. Grandfather taught me, a resurrection isn't a physical event. It is for his work to be evaluated. That's what he means by resurrection. And that's when he resurrects as a god. If that happens, even when my grandfather dies, he will always be with me. Wait, always. I don't have to be alone anymore. I will be with my grandpa, and our work will be acknowledged, and we will both become gods and gain eternal peace. I'm Takano. I will make my grandfather into a god. I will be a god. Therefore, it's eternal. We'll be together forever and ever. Okay. Interesting. What? There's a key on a keychain. The key has a tag that says hen house, but the lock Eriko is trying to open isn't for the hen house. It's supposed to open effortlessly. At least that was what was supposed to happen. But it doesn't open. See beads of sweat on Eriko's forehead. Eriko was the one who came up with this idea. Eriko is starting to panic. We start to feel panicky too. This only opens the hen house. Let's stop. Let's go back. Shh. We're supposed to be cleaning the hen house. If they find us here, they find out why we are here and why we are trying to open the lock to the back door. All four of us will be punished with a punishment of a pig with torn arms and legs for sure. Thank you, game. I know exactly what that is. Don't panic, Eriko. This key opens this lock, right? You already tried, right? I'm telling you to shut up. This is the right key. Just hard to open, that's all. He's almost shrieking. Our hearts pound loudly. It's as if the sounds from our hearts are echoing in the hallway. That's when we hear footsteps that don't belong to a child. Shh. Someone's coming. Three of us hold our breath, but Eriko didn't hear. He keeps fussing with the lock and the key, as if everything will be okay when she opens the lock. Eriko, someone is coming. Be quiet. I know this is the key. I'm not dreaming. I already tried and it opened. Come on, why isn't this working? When this lock is open, we can all be happy. We can say goodbye to this hell. Eriko, somebody's coming. Who the fuck is Eriko? Who the fuck is that? Why are we introducing new characters in Chapter 7? My father and mother died. Where are we? Who am I? We were Takano, and now my father and mother have died. I don't know exactly how old they were. I was too young to remember. They went shopping without me, and that must be why they were punished. It was a train accident. Terrible disaster. A lot of people died in the accident. But my father was one of the lucky ones. He was still alive when he arrived at the hospital, so he was able to leave some words with me. My mother died instantly. Daddy, Daddy, Daddy! I didn't want to admit that this person I could hardly recognize was my father. As I called out to him, I had hoped that this was someone else. But, unfortunately, it was my father. Maybe I shouldn't have wakened him. Because I woke him up, he was reminded of the crucial pain he was forgetting about. Ooh. Ooh. What? Daddy, 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 daddy. He tried to move his right arm. He tried to move his right arm so he could rob my head. But his arm was wrapped in bandages and his hand wasn't there. I didn't see his hand anywhere on the bed. I only had scary movies of his right hand. Oh, scary memories. What the fuck? What? Scary movies? It was my main job. It's my main job was to slap me when I did something. Its main job was to slap me when I did something bad, but I never wished it to be gone. Besides, that hand also rubbed my head. Even though that happened only a few times, it was a big and warm hand and it rubbed my head very gently. But no matter what good deeds I did, he could no longer rub my head. No. His hand was the least of his worries. He had to go into emergency surgery. The doctors had already warned me that the chance of him surviving was very low. That was why I was allowed to see him regardless of his condition. Not only wasn't he able to rub my head anymore, he might be gone forever. Daddy, the surgery will make you better, right? Daddy, you'll get better, right? Right? Listen carefully. I may not make it. Even if I die, you have to live strongly. No. You'll get better. The doctor is going to make you better. But you're not going to die. He was a stubborn and old-fashioned father. He believed endurance was a virtue, and he never complained about anything. That was why I couldn't believe he actually said he might not make it. I tried to deny what he said, but my wish wouldn't prolong his remaining time. My father knew his time was limited and tried to tell me some important things. I interrupted his effort by crying like a baby. I wished he would slap me, just like he used to every time I cried like a baby. But he would never slap me again. Listen well. Your mother and I both lost all of our family in the war. So, after I'm dead, there won't be anyone to take care of you. I didn't need to hear that. My parents used to tell me all the time, so I was aware of that fact. In other words, my father was the only relative left in this entire world. If I die, you can count on Takano Sensei. Takano Hifumi Sensei. Can you say it? Takano Hifumi. That's right. Takano Hifumi Sensei. What? He is my former teacher. He will help you. Cough, cough, cough. So I'm Takano. Here's my theory before we get into it. Well, theory, I think it just told me. I'm Takano. I learn and Takano is like my second dad, and then he dies, so then I take Takano's name to avoid using my name, which is a completely different name, and I'm not actually Takano. Takano's name isn't actually Takano. Right? I was kicked out of the room. I didn't know what to do. Nobody told me how my father was doing or when the surgery was going to start. Nobody told me that was going to be the last conversation I had with my father. I think I talked about Takano Sensei to the people at the government office. They always asked if I knew his phone number. I said I didn't. They didn't ask me anything further. Sometimes they told me they'd look into it, but nothing led to anything. They couldn't find my guardian, so I ended up going to an orphanage. At the time, there were plenty of orphans from the war, so although there were many orphanages around, they were all full. There were also some orphanages run by civilians. I went to one of those civilian orphanages. There was no profit for taking in an orphan in the first place, so the civilian people who were running orphanages must have been humanitarians. Sure, they hoped children would grow in this loving environment and move on to society with a sense of gratitude. But reality isn't that promising. How many children can actually express their gratitude towards their parents in this world? Children are supposed to be nurtured by their parents' love. Therefore, when that environment is destroyed, their hearts are wounded. Every child has his or her own personality. Receiving affection doesn't guarantee that a child will become someone angelic. Not everyone's heart can be healed. That's why there was some problem kids at the orphanage. Maybe I shouldn't call them problem kids though. Their sadness, the sadness and despair of losing their parents, and anger at having to hide such feelings filled those kids' hearts. Spending time individually with the children could have solved the problems. But at the orphanage where I was, none of the staff members even tried to spend time with them or put an effort in to understand them. All they could do was make sure that the kids followed the rules. Therefore, they couldn't see the children's emotional pleas as help as problems. No one expresses love without expecting something in return in this world. The person who founded this orphanage was expecting something in return as well. He wanted children to appreciate him. That was why such a faint dream was destroyed by the cruel reality. Children called the orphanage a prison, and nobody appreciated the staff. In fact, all they did was complain. That made the staff realize slowly that love alone couldn't run a facility like that. Just like how the children called it a prison, the staff started to recognize the facility as a prison too. It was a sad chain reaction resulting from mistrust from both sides. The staff bound the children with rules so they could suppress any problem behaviors. There was a framed picture of the founder in this orphanage, but I've never seen him in person. Is he satisfied with the fact that he has put his own money into this social service? Or maybe he finally realized his dream of being surrounded by angelic children was being celebrated for what he has done was simply a dream. I don't know, but there's one thing I'm sure of. Such a dream didn't exist at the orphanage. There were so many rules. But the most important one was to be silent. Children have a tendency of talking loudly, and sometimes that leads to a fight. That was why the children weren't allowed to have private talks. They must have thought things would go smoothly if there weren't any private talks. However, I always heard people's voices at the orphanage. There were two kinds of voices. One was the staff yelling, and the other was the children crying. We were not allowed to walk around inside the orphanage freely. We didn't know who was crying. Along with the crying and yelling, we heard something metallic being smashed against something. We knew it was some kind of punishment, but there was no way for us to even imagine. We trembled and pretended we didn't hear anything and kept working on our homework. One of my roommates told me it was a punishment of a casket. They didn't tell me any further, and I didn't want to know either. Even if we behaved the same way as yesterday, if the staff were in a bad mood, they could pick on us. So even if I didn't want to know, I might suddenly find out what a punishment of a casket was one day. The footsteps of a staff member were getting closer. We noticed them, so we straightened our backs and pretended we were studying hard. It was more important that the staff saw us studying hard than that we actually got any work done. I noticed that the girl next to me was falling asleep, so I poked her with my elbow. She noticed my signal and straightened her back like the other children. It was almost evening time. This was the hardest time for us to keep ourselves awake and the most dangerous time. The door to our room opened and a mean-looking man showed up. Then he looked around and made sure none of us were falling asleep. Even if we were actually studying hard, if he thought we were asleep, we were out. That was why we had to make sure we appeared to be studying very hard. The man walked around our desks. I hoped he would just walk by me. That was what we all prayed as we kept working on our homework. The more we pretended to study hard, the more we could hear the sound of metallic objects. The sound of metallic objects crashing into each other along with screams. We couldn't even imagine what the poor subject was going through. Also, maybe there was something worse than a punishment of the casket. To erase such fear, we tried to concentrate even harder on our work. We kept working. The metal sound and the screams went on forever. The only time when we are allowed to exchange words with our roommates is right after we turn off the lights to go to bed. Alright, I'm going to go ahead and end it here. So I think this is, if I'm not mistaken, this is the backstory for Takano and why she's a little jerk the entire time of the fucking whole game. I'm going to go ahead and pause it. I know it's only 30 minutes, but let me know how the sound is, if it's too loud or if it could be louder. And then I'll adjust it before we do the next one. Yeah. It's interesting that we're starting off with what I assume is Takano, but I don't know. I'd be very surprised if it was just someone else. I can't think of who it would be besides Takano, though. So, and Takano's not her real name because Takano Hifumi was some guy. So she took his name, maybe, is probably what happened. I don't know. Anyway, thank you guys so much for watching. If you guys enjoyed today's episode, please hit the like button. Subscribe if you haven't done so already. We'll be playing this all the way through eventually, so stay tuned for that. And then we'll probably play something else. We'll probably finish up that last visual novel, the one with all the CG. I always forget what it's called. I just know it as the one with like the amazing CG. We'll probably go back to that, finish that up, and then maybe play one more, and then we might head back and do the console arcs. I don't know. It really depends on how we're feeling coming back, or maybe we'll come back and do like, because I know there's multiple 7th expansion storylines, so it might even be interesting to go to a different one and see what's going on there. If we wanted to continue this, like I said, it really depends on what we want to do. I hope to see you guys in the next episode, whenever that may be. Peace out, you guys.